What if the most iconic leading men in Hollywood were hiding a secret so big it could shatter their golden image? Behind the smoldering stares, the chiseled jawlines, and the flawless waves of hair that drove audiences wild, lay one of Tinseltown's most carefully protected illusions. From rugged cowboys who ruled the frontier to suave spies who conquered the screen, these legends weren't just performing in their films, they were performing every single day of their lives. The thick, perfect hair that defined their masculinity wasn't real at all. It was Hollywood's greatest magic trick, expensive, handcrafted toupees guarded with threats, lawsuits, and cover-ups. Studios would stop at nothing to keep the truth hidden, terrified that baldness might destroy a matinee idol's career. But today, the curtain finally falls. We're exposing 10 Golden Age icons whose dashing images were built on wigs, weaves, and studio deception. And once you know the truth, you'll never look at these classic stars the same way again. If you're ready to uncover the secrets behind the silver screen, subscribe to Golden Legacy and hit that notification bell, because the revelations we're about to reveal will forever change how you see Hollywood's golden era. John Wayne. John Wayne, the hidden crown of the cowboy. John Wayne's rugged masculinity made him America's beloved Duke for generations, the ultimate symbol of frontier grit and raw strength. His windswept hair looked tailor-made for dusty trails and desert showdowns. But behind that iconic silhouette lay Hollywood's most extravagant secret, an elaborate toupee system that cost more than the salaries of many working actors. Wayne began losing his hair in his late 30s, right as his career exploded in the 1940s. A balding cowboy, the studios feared, wouldn't sell tickets. So they invested heavily in crafting the perfect illusion. His toupees weren't sleek or polished. They were designed to look weathered, windswept, as if nature itself had styled them. But keeping that illusion alive came with constant battles. Dusty sets and blazing heat made securing the hairpiece nearly impossible. Wayne's clever solution? A simple bandana hidden beneath his cowboy hat, anchoring the toupee firmly in place during wild rides and dangerous stunts. The irony was striking. Hollywood's toughest man, its eternal cowboy, relied on an elaborate wig. Yet his authenticity never cracked. To fans, his toupee became as essential as his six-shooter or spurs. Part of the legend, part of the Duke himself. Cary Grant. Cary Grant, Hollywood's most expensive secret, his legendary hairpiece. To the world, Grant was the embodiment of cinematic perfection. Elegant, refined, and eternally handsome. His hair never moved out of place, whether he was outrunning crop dusters or sweeping leading ladies off their feet. But that flawless image carried a staggering price. Behind the charm and grace were the most expensive toupees Hollywood had ever known. Grant began losing his hair in his 30s, right as his career reached its dazzling peak. For a star whose allure rested on youthful sophistication, a receding hairline was nothing short of a crisis. His solution was as refined as the man himself, custom toupees crafted at a cost 10 times higher than any of his peers. According to makeup artist Del Armstrong, Grant traveled with an arsenal of hairpieces, each meticulously designed for different lighting, camera angles, and moods. What truly set him apart, however, was his subtle embrace of time. Instead of fighting age, Grant let his toupees gray naturally, creating seamless transitions that fooled even the keenest eye. Each piece was built by master artisans, maintained by specialists, and replaced at the slightest hint of imperfection. This wasn't vanity, it was strategy, an investment in preserving the most sophisticated image Hollywood had ever projected. Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra, the chairman's secret little friend on top. Once a skinny crooner, Sinatra reinvented himself into the suave, commanding chairman of the board. His slick hair, perfectly combed and never out of place, became as much a trademark as his velvet voice. Whether dazzling in Las Vegas showrooms or commanding the silver screen, that immaculate hair was part of the legend. But behind the cool confidence was a carefully guarded illusion. His little friend on top, a toupee that became as essential as his fedora or microphone. By his mid-30s, just as his career roared back with an Oscar for From Here to Eternity, Sinatra was quietly losing his hair. The toupee wasn't just vanity, it was armor, a final touch that completed the image of America's ultimate entertainer. Among the Rat Pack, though, no secret was safe. Dean Martin turned it into a running gag on stage, and Sammy Davis Jr. remembered how sensitive Frank could be if outsiders dared to mention it. But within his circle, the ribbing was part of the bond, proof of love, trust, and friendship. For Sinatra, the hairpiece wasn't a flaw. It was part of the performance, part of the myth, woven into the very fabric of the legend we still remember today. Sean Connery. Sean Connery, from Bond's perfect hair to bald icon. Sean Connery didn't just play James Bond, he defined him. With his rugged charm and effortless sophistication, he became cinema's most iconic secret agent. But behind the tuxedos, martinis, and smoldering looks was a secret that could have unraveled 007's image. That legendary head of hair was a lie. Connery began losing his hair in his 20s, long before Bond, James Bond, ever rolled off his tongue. For producers, a bald spy was unthinkable. The solution? A toupee so flawless it became as essential to Bond as his Walther PPK. Master makeup artist Charles Parker engineered a hairpiece built for action, secured with industrial-strength adhesive, reinforced for underwater brawls, and immovable during the most passionate love scenes. Whether Connery was skiing down icy cliffs or seducing a femme fatale, the Bond toupee never slipped. But by the time Connery hit 40, he'd had enough. He ripped away the disguise, stepping into the world with a bare scalp and unshakable confidence. And the world loved him for it. His baldness didn't weaken his magnetism, it made him timeless. Connery proved what Bond himself would have: true power never comes from appearance, but from sheer, undeniable confidence. Humphrey Bogart. Humphrey Bogart, the man who never removed his crown. With that steely gaze, gravelly voice, and effortless cool, Bogart wasn't just an actor. He was Hollywood's definition of the tough guy. As Rick Blaine in Casablanca, he embodied masculine sophistication. But behind the silver screen mystique lurked a startling secret. Bogart was almost completely bald, and his legendary image relied on a meticulously crafted toupee. Working with him on set was an art form of its own. Lighting technician Harold Edison once admitted that entire setups had to be redesigned just to hide the hairpiece's edges, because under the wrong spotlight, the illusion would crumble. Even at home, Bogart's obsession with appearances held firm. His wife, Lauren Bacall, later revealed she rarely saw him without it. He simply refused. To Bogart, that hairpiece wasn't just vanity, it was armor. Without it, he felt exposed, stripped of the invincible persona the world demanded. The most heartbreaking chapter came in his final days, as cancer consumed him between 1956 and 1957. Gaunt, weakened, and confined to a hospital bed, Bogart still clung to his toupee. Even as death closed in, he refused to let go of the image he had built, a dying legend, determined to remain impeccable until his very last breath. Fred Astaire, the toupee that never missed a step. Fred Astaire's elegance didn't just command respect, it redefined Hollywood's sophistication. But for the sharp-eyed viewer, there was something even more astonishing: his hair never moved. No matter how frenzied the dance, whether he was spinning, leaping, or literally gliding across ceilings, Astaire's locks stayed perfectly in place. The secret? An invisible partner in every performance, a meticulously crafted toupee. Astaire began losing his hair in his early 20s, and by the time he arrived in Hollywood, he relied entirely on custom hairpieces. But how do you keep a toupee flawless through grueling choreography? That challenge pushed Hollywood's styling technology to new heights. Makeup artist Robert Schiffer engineered adhesives strong enough to survive sweat and lightning-fast movement. Astaire's toupees were built on silk bases instead of the usual lace, making them both more secure and breathable during marathon dance numbers. Ever the perfectionist, Astaire kept multiple identical pieces on hand, entrusting only a select few stylists to care for them. Through some of the most physically demanding routines ever captured on film, his toupee never slipped, never shifted, never failed. It was the ultimate illusion. Astaire didn't just dance with perfection, he wore it. Spencer Tracy. Spencer Tracy, the natural actor with an unnatural secret. On screen, Tracy seemed effortless, as if he wasn't acting at all but simply living before the camera. His everyman authenticity made him one of Hollywood's most admired performers. Yet behind that seamless realism lay a carefully guarded illusion. The hair audiences thought was his own was, in fact, an artful toupee. By the early 1950s, Tracy's hair had thinned, but MGM devised a masterful solution. Instead of shocking fans with a sudden full head of hair, his first toupees merely filled in sparse patches, so discreet that no one noticed. Over time, they were made gradually thicker, a subtle transformation that perfectly echoed Tracy's belief that acting should never call attention to itself. The secret was so intimate that he wore the toupee almost constantly, even in private. The only exception was with Katharine Hepburn, his legendary co-star and lifelong love. In their quietest, most vulnerable moments, Tracy would remove it, exposing not just his bare head, but the raw truth of who he was. To Hepburn, that gesture said more than any performance ever could. William Holden. William Holden, the Golden Boy's hidden struggle. William Holden was hailed as Hollywood's Golden Boy, his dazzling smile and effortless charm making him one of cinema's most beloved leading men for decades. But behind the polished image lay a secret that gnawed at him for most of his career. Holden wore a toupee, a silent burden that filled him with unease and self-doubt. The irony was cruel. In 1950, as his career roared back to life with Sunset Boulevard, a film about the illusions of Hollywood, Holden was quietly battling one of his own. At just 30, his once thick hair was thinning, forcing him to join the long list of stars who hid behind carefully crafted facades. Paramount's renowned hair stylist Larry Germain tailored each piece to perfection, covering bald spots and blending seamlessly with what remained of Holden's natural hair. And as Holden's roles grew more romantic, the toupees grew thicker. But unlike many actors who accepted their wigs as part of the job, Holden never made peace with the charade. He despised the constant deception. Away from cameras and crowds, he would often strip off the hairpiece, confronting the uncomfortable truth in the mirror. For all his fame and fortune, the Golden Boy could never escape the feeling that he was living behind a mask, his private struggle hidden beneath Hollywood's brightest spotlight. Bob Hope. Bob Hope, the toupee that became comedy gold. Bob Hope's trademark hooked nose and seemingly ageless face made him one of the most recognizable entertainers in the world. For decades, his hair looked as timeless as his punchlines, never thinning, never graying. But behind the illusion was a carefully crafted toupee that became as much a part of his act as his quick wit. Hope first slipped on the hairpiece in the 1940s, just as his career was exploding on radio and stage. Unlike other Hollywood stars who wore toupees strictly to maintain their romantic leading man image, Hope's hair had to withstand slapstick stunts, pratfalls, and endless gags. And rather than keep it a shameful secret, he leaned into it. Performing for troops overseas, he'd poke fun at his reliable rug, cracking jokes about it slipping or shifting mid-show, turning what could have been a vulnerability into a source of laughter. What made it iconic wasn't the toupee itself, but how Hope owned it. For nearly half a century, the same hairpiece remained perched on his head, even as the years caught up with him. By the time he was in his 80s and 90s, audiences weren't fooled, but they didn't care. The toupee had become part of the legend, as inseparable from Bob Hope as the smile that never left his face. Cesar Romero. When the toupee became the star, Cesar Romero turned wig-wearing into an art form, though not in the way anyone expected. Over the years, his hairpiece began to overshadow his acting. From suave Latin lover in the 1930s to the maniacal Joker in Batman, Romero's flawless mane was never really his own, and eventually, he stopped caring who knew it. Romero started losing his hair in his early 30s, a devastating blow to the image of a silver screen heartthrob. But instead of panicking, he experimented with styles until the thinning became too obvious to ignore. That's when the toupee took center stage. In his early films, it looked convincing. But by the time he slipped into the Joker's makeup, the piece had grown so obvious it looked like a furry hat perched on his head. Makeup artist Ben Nye once recalled that Romero never bothered hiding the truth. He'd casually adjust his toupee on set, or even peel it off when the lights grew hot, laughing that the hair was simply part of the performance. His carefree attitude created some of Hollywood's most unintentionally hilarious moments. And he wasn't alone. These 10 Hollywood legends proved that the Golden Age's most closely guarded secret wasn't scandal or sin, it was baldness. From John Wayne's rugged cowboy locks to Sean Connery's sophisticated Bond quiff, the very images that defined masculinity for generations were carefully crafted illusions. Some, like Cary Grant and Frank Sinatra, treated their toupees like essential props, spending fortunes to keep the illusion alive.